supporting Bernie Sanders is very important. He performs better than Biden does at the polls against Trump. He performs better in the industrial Midwest. And guess what? As we learned in 2016, you can get all the votes you want against Trump. If you don't get the Electoral College, we will not get the presidency back. We can get millions more votes than Donald Trump. We need to win Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, which are all the states that Bernie Sanders wins against Trump and outperforms Biden in many of these states.
Well,
this is due to trade. This is due to immigration. This is due to a lot of different issues in which the senator has exemplified a commitment to working class people.
I hear you.
Biden's support for NAFTA will lose states like Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin if he is the nominee. Those are the states Hillary lost, and that's why she lost the election.
Hillary kind of making the anti-electability case for Joe Biden. Let's take a listen to what she said.
He is building the kind of coalition that I had, basically. It's a broad-based coalition. I finished, most of the work I needed to do for the nomination on Super Tuesday, and then it kind of lingered on. And I think Joe is on track to doing exactly the same thing.
As you can see, people are still angry that Biden voted for NAFTA and betrayed the workers. Bernie voted against NAFTA, and that's how in a general election he can win Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin.
It is important for the voters of this country to ask themselves two questions. Number one, which candidate is stronger in terms of being able to defeat Trump? And number two, what are the differences in a record? Joe has been in Washington for a long time, as have I. And my point is, when people see the records, Joe voted for the war in Iraq, I opposed the war in Iraq. Joe voted for the Wall Street bailout, I vigorously opposed the Wall Street bailout. When you go to the Midwest, we're in Michigan right now, you go to Wisconsin, you go to Pennsylvania, people want to know about your views on trade. Because disastrous trade agreements like NAFTA and PNTR with China cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs, decimated communities here in Michigan. I helped lead the opposition to those trade agreements. Joe voted for them.
If you believe that Biden will care for the workers, if he made that promise to you, please consider that he just broke a promise on Saturday.
Right after I got elected in 1972, I wasn't old enough to be sworn in. I was 29 years old. I had to wait. I had to wait time to be sworn in. And
I got evicted. Joe Biden does not have a housing plan for me. I got evicted. Joe Biden does not have a housing plan.
That's right. Let them go. You won't get evicted. You won't get it. You listen. Will you listen for just a second? If you listen, I'll tell you. If you listen, I'll tell you. Under my, just tell her to be quiet just a second. This is not a Trump rally, okay? You have reason to be upset. Will you listen? Will you listen? Would you be willing, the three of you, to talk to me after this is over? Because I'm going to make sure you're not evicted when I'm President of the United States of America. You can't be. I can't do anything now. I'm not the president.
We need a homes guarantee. Where's your housing plan?
Will you commit to a homes guarantee?
You got a home guarantee, man. Where? Look at my plan. You just listen.
I got cancer and I got evicted. That's how they treat you.
Ma'am, let me ask, hey, whoa. If you be quiet for a second, will you meet with me after this is over, and I'll explain to you my entire housing plan, and you will be square. I promise you. Take a look at it. Well, look, here's the deal.
It's not enough. I've read your housing plan. It's no good. It doesn't help us.
I'm not sure. I can check. I'm sorry. What did you say? You said what? You said he's not going to meet with us after he said he would, and you want us to leave? That's what you said? I just shut down the Biden rally because we need a homes guarantee. I got evicted after I was diagnosed with cancer for the second time. His homes plan is not adequate, and we need a homes guarantee. He said that he would meet with us. He committed to a meeting, and then he put us out and had his staff deny us that meeting. Biden lies! That ain't right!
I've been a union auto worker since 2008. The community has been decimated by trade deals. Only one candidate for president has consistently opposed every disastrous trade deal, and that candidate is Bernie Sanders. The banksters that have been robbing us blind and stealing our pensions and destroying our communities, they have something to worry about. This is a man of conviction, a man of integrity, a man that is going to stand up for you no matter what. That's why I personally support Bernie Sanders.
I'm Bernie Sanders, and I approve this message. The great challenge that we have economically as a nation is to end the decline of the American middle class. The truth is that at the end of 43 years, the average American worker today, despite huge increases in technology and productivity, is making just a few cents an hour more than he or she did 40 years ago. That is pretty crazy. Meanwhile, major corporations are enjoying record-breaking profits, and 49% of all new income goes to the top 1%. So how do we create an economy that works for ordinary Americans and not just the wealthiest people in this country? What we need now is a set of policies that says to corporate America, you have got to respect the people who have created your corporation, the people who have made you the wealth. You just can't treat them like dirt, throw them out on the street anytime you want to, and then move abroad. There are a number of policy ideas that I will implement as President of the United States that will do just that. Perhaps most importantly, we cannot continue a situation in which corporations shut down in America, and then the next day they get online at Washington to get huge federal contracts, military contracts, and all other kinds of contracts. We will issue an executive order ending federal contracts to corporations that outsource American jobs. If you want a contract paid for by the taxpayers and the workers of this country, treat workers with respect. As somebody who voted against NAFTA, somebody who voted against CAFTA, led the effort against permanent normal trade relations with China, opposed to the TPP, we need trade policies in this country that benefit the working people of the United States and not just the CEOs of large corporations.
Ultimately, what they want to see is our workers forced to compete against the desperate people in China who work for 10, 15, or 20 cents an hour.
So we are going to renegotiate all of the unfair trade deals with the goal in mind of improving the standard of living of American workers and not just making huge profits for multinational corporations. We need trade representatives who help us develop policy who come from the ranks of the working class of this country. Therefore, we will not be appointing trade representatives who come from Wall Street or the corporate sector. Trump has passed tax legislation which gives tax breaks that reward companies for moving their factories overseas. We will end all of those tax breaks. We have got to be bold and acknowledge that China is a currency manipulator, and we have got to prevent it from dumping artificially cheap products into the United States. These are some of the initiatives that we intend to implement when we are in the White House. Trade in itself is a good thing, but the function of trade has got to be to improve the standard of living for the American worker, a standard of living which has gone nowhere in the last 40 years.
The argument over which candidate's policy platform best serves America is the right argument to have during a primary. But the much bigger argument, or the one that I see more often, is that Sanders is sure to be an electoral disaster. He's going to be George McGovern all over again. He's going to get annihilated. And I am just here to tell you that the evidence we have, to the extent we have evidence about an unknowable future, just does not support that at all. I mean, I spend all day looking at this stuff. I would love to know the future, as we all would. We can't know the future. All we can do is just look at some of the evidence that we have. And I'm telling you, it's not in the data. It just isn't. Here are the head-to-head matchups between President Trump and the Democratic presidential candidates. He is consistently, in poll after poll after poll, at or near the top of all of them, while the candidates who are characterized often as more electable are lower. Sanders has higher favorability ratings than any other Democratic presidential candidate in the field. His campaign has raised more money. His campaign's cash on hand in the latest FEC filing more than double the other non-billionaire candidates, and his ability to raise money is not nothing when it comes to electability and possibly $1 billion being dropped on his head. If you can point me the data that we have where Sanders is 7 points behind in head-to-head matchups with Trump, I think there'd be real reason to worry. But it's just not what the data says. If you don't like Bernie Sanders because you don't think he'd be a good president, then that's your choice. You should act on that as a citizen. But if you are freaking out because he is so obviously an electoral disaster. I'm here to tell you, it's just not what the information that we have now suggests. It's not in the data. It just isn't.